Hi there, I'm Farah. And on my 20th birthday, my parents kept telling me, just wait, something big is coming. Turns out, it wasn't a party. It wasn't a gift. It was the moment I finally realized I was never really part of this family. For years, they smiled in my face, while taking everything behind my back, my tuition money, my future, even my name on a loan I never signed. They laughed about me when they thought I wasn't listening. They erased me from their will like I was nothing. But the worst part wasn't what they took. It was how long they let me believe I mattered. You think that's the worst of it? Wait until you hear how far they went to make sure I stayed invisible. For weeks, my parents had kept dropping hints like confetti at a surprise party I wasn't invited to. Just wait, my mother kept saying. Something big is coming. My dad would nod along with that smile, the one that never quite reached his eyes. My siblings, Vesper and Calum, would shoot each other these knowing looks whenever I asked what was going on, like I was the only one not in on the joke. It was spring in Charleston, the kind of soft, bright April that made the air smell like wet grass and blooming jasmine. I was turning 32, old enough to know that surprises rarely worked in my favor, but young enough to still hope, foolishly, that maybe this time would be different. The day started normally. I woke early, checked my email out of habit, grabbed a coffee from the corner cafe on my way to the design firm where I'd worked the last 6 years. My phone buzzed around noon. Mom again. You're gonna love what's coming. Just wait till tonight. I smiled politely, texted back a thumbs-up emoji, but something inside me stayed unsettled. After work, I passed by the university's bursar office. I had been taking night classes for my master's in digital arts. Nothing major, one course at a time, paid up front. I logged in to check my account, planning to make next month's tuition payment. My stomach dropped. Zero balance. No, worse, not just zero. It said withdrawal confirmed, $2,000, gone. I stared at the screen, trying to breathe past the sudden tightness in my chest. It wasn't possible. I knew I hadn't touched that money. That account was for tuition only. I'd been putting aside every extra dollar I had to avoid student loans. I checked again. Same result. The withdrawal date? 3 days ago. On the drive home, I kept replaying the past few weeks in my head. The way Mom and Dad had smiled a little too wide. How Vesper had joked at Sunday dinner. Don't worry, Farah. You'll finally feel included. I had laughed then, but now the words crawled under my skin. When I walked through the front door that evening, the house was too quiet. No balloons, no decorations, just the tick of the kitchen clock. Mom was in the living room, scrolling her phone, her feet tucked under her like she didn't have a care in the world. Hey, sweetheart, she greeted without looking up. Everything okay? I swallowed. Did you take money from my tuition account? She blinked like I'd asked if she borrowed sugar. Oh, that? Don't worry about it. You'll understand after tonight. Just trust us, okay? Trust. That word hit harder than I expected. I nodded stiffly and went upstairs, locking the door behind me. It wasn't until later, around 9, after dinner and small talk that felt like swallowing broken glass, that I checked my email again. A notification from one of the credit monitoring sites I'd signed up for years ago, mostly to protect myself from phishing scams. Alert. New loan opened in your name. My heart hammered against my ribs as I clicked the link. A personal loan for $7,000. Taken out 4 days ago. Cosigner, Seraphine Duval, my mother. The room tilted. I scrolled through the fine print. My name everywhere, my credit score stamped at the bottom like a joke. She hadn't even told me. I wanted to run downstairs, to scream, to demand how she could possibly think this was okay. But instead, I sat there frozen, staring at the screen, the weight of years pressing down on my chest. This wasn't the first time my parents made decisions for my own good without asking me. But this was theft. Outside, the streetlights flickered on. It was almost 10 now, the hum of cicadas weaving with the distant sound of cars along the harbor. I forced myself to breathe, to think. Instead of storming downstairs, I started gathering everything. Screenshots of the bank withdrawal, the loan document, emails. If they wanted to play games, I would keep score. By midnight, I was staring at the ceiling, the glow of my phone screen fading beside me. That's when it happened. The message. A ping. From Vesper. Make sure she doesn't find out before tomorrow. It'll ruin everything. I stared at it, my heart slowing. The message disappeared a second later, deleted, but not before I saw it. They weren't planning something for me. They were planning something without me. The message wasn't meant for me, but it confirmed my worst fear. I sat there in the dark, the glow from my phone burning into my eyes. That one sentence from Vesper wasn't just a mistake. It was a confession. Proof that whatever my family had been planning wasn't for me. It was about me. Or worse, against me. I didn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling until dawn began creeping in, washing the room with that soft, colorless light before sunrise. My mind kept looping the last few weeks, every time they'd smiled a little too much, every vague promise of a big surprise. By 7:30, I had showered, dressed, and opened my laptop. I needed to distract myself, but my hands hovered over the keyboard without typing. My stomach twisted, heavy with something I hadn't wanted to name before. Dread. The ping of another message pulled me back. This time, it wasn't from Vesper. It was from Aunt Celeste, in the family group chat. Make sure you leave early tomorrow. Don't let Farah find out. It'll ruin the trip. The message sat there for 2 full seconds before disappearing. Deleted. But not before I screenshotted it. I stared at the image, the edges of my vision pulsing. So it wasn't just Vesper. It was all of them. My parents, my siblings, even Celeste. Planning a trip without me, whispering behind my back like I was some fragile ornament they decided didn't belong on the shelf anymore. My phone buzzed again. Mom, texting like nothing had happened. Morning, honey. Big day tomorrow. Hope you're ready. Ready for what? To be left behind. I spent the afternoon going through work emails half-heartedly, distracted by the weight pressing against my ribs. Around 5, I shut my laptop, unable to focus anymore. I needed air, space, something to clear the fog creeping into my chest. I grabbed my jacket and headed out, letting my feet take me through the quiet streets of our neighborhood. Magnolia trees lined the sidewalks, petals scattered like confetti on the pavement. I barely noticed. As the sun began to set, casting gold over the rooftops, I found myself circling back home. My parents' car wasn't in the driveway, which didn't surprise me. They were probably at Celeste's, finalizing whatever betrayal they thought I hadn't caught on to. I almost walked straight to my room, but something stopped me outside the kitchen. Voices. Low, hurried. I leaned closer. Vesper's voice, sharp and familiar. She's not going to find out, don't worry. Then Calum. She's too busy with her boring job to notice anything, and even if she does, well, maybe it's time she learns her place. Vesper laughed, soft but cutting. After this trip, she'll finally get it. We're done pretending. My chest tightened so hard it felt like I couldn't breathe. They weren't just forgetting me. They were erasing me. On purpose. I backed away quietly, careful not to make the floorboards creak. Upstairs, I closed my bedroom door, my fingers shaking as I opened my phone and typed a single sentence into my notes app. They want me gone. I spent the next hour saving everything. The messages, the screenshots, even the timestamp of the conversation I'd overheard. Not because I wanted to confront them yet, but because I needed to remember I wasn't crazy. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling again. But instead of replaying their words, my mind began piecing together every moment that had led to this. The subtle digs at family dinners, the way my parents always prioritized Vesper and Calum's needs over mine, how they'd told me I was too serious, too sensitive, too much. It wasn't new. It had been happening for years. And tomorrow, my birthday, would be the final proof. But before I could sink fully into sleep, I got up, restless, and walked over to the old bookshelf in the hallway. My fingers ran over the spines until they stopped at a dusty, leather-bound photo album. I hadn't opened it in years. Back in my room, I flipped the cover open, and there it was. A picture I hadn't thought about in over a decade. A forgotten memory I had buried long ago. I turned the page of the album slowly, my fingers brushing over the worn photograph like it might disappear if I moved too fast. In the picture, I couldn't have been older than 5, small, dark-haired, sitting alone on a park bench. My knees scraped, hands folded neatly in my lap. No smile. The memory hit me like cold water, that day at Hampton Park. I had been too young to understand why no one came back for me. We'd gone there for a family picnic. Me, Vesper, Calum, Mom, and Dad. The weather had been warm, the air sticky with spring. They'd packed sandwiches and sodas, and I'd been so excited to spend the afternoon outside. Somewhere between chasing butterflies and climbing the jungle gym, I had wandered off. I remembered sitting down when I got tired, thinking they'd come back any minute. But they didn't. They didn't even realize I was missing. Hours later, a park officer had found me, alone and crying quietly. He brought me home, where Mom opened the door and gasped like she'd seen a ghost. "Oh my God, we didn't even notice. You're so quiet, sweetie. You're like a little shadow sometimes." She'd laughed like it was a joke, brushing it off. Dad had ruffled my hair and said, "You've got to learn to keep up, kiddo." They told the story at family parties for years. How little Farah had vanished for an afternoon because she was too quiet, too serious, too easy to forget. I closed the album gently, like if I slammed it shut, the memory would spill out and drown me. It wasn't the first time they'd forgotten me. It was the first time I'd realized they never even looked. The house was silent around me, the kind of deep silence that presses against your skin. Outside, the streetlights buzzed faintly, throwing soft halos onto the pavement. My phone lay beside me, dark and still. Lying back, I stared at the ceiling again, feeling the weight in my chest growing heavier. That day in the park wasn't an accident. It wasn't a one-off. It was the blueprint. Every missed school recital, every dinner conversation where I faded into the wallpaper, every birthday where they gave Vesper and Calum the spotlight and handed me a candle to hold. It all made sense now. I'd spent years thinking I needed to work harder, speak louder, smile bigger so they'd see me. But tonight, I saw them. I saw who they were, and I saw who I wasn't to them. I sat up, swinging my legs over the side of the bed. My hands moved on their own, grabbing my phone, reopening every screenshot I had saved. The messages, the loan, the missing tuition, Celeste's slip-up, Vesper's deleted text, all of it. Each one another breadcrumb in a trail I could no longer ignore. The clock on my nightstand blinked 2:13 a.m. I should have been asleep, resting before the so-called big day my family kept promising me. Instead, I was wide awake, my mind sharper than it had been in years. I wasn't going to play along anymore. I wouldn't wait for their surprise. I would prepare for it. Downstairs, the faint murmur of voices drifted up the staircase. I glanced at the clock again. It was too late for casual conversation. I crept to my door, easing it open just a crack. Laughter floated up from the living room. Familiar, casual, but tinged with something else. Something mean. I could hear Mom's voice, light and sweet. "She's always been a little slow, you know. Never quite caught on." Vesper's laugh followed. "That's why tomorrow will be so much fun. She'll finally get the message." A chair scraped against the hardwood floor. Calum's voice, quieter but unmistakable. "She won't see it coming. She never does." The words hit harder than anything else so far. They weren't laughing about something funny. They were laughing about me. I didn't need to hear the punchline to know the joke was on me. The sound of their laughter stuck with me long after it faded. It echoed in the silence of my room, bouncing off the walls like a cruel reminder of where I stood in this family. Or rather, where I didn't. By the time morning came, I hadn't slept. I drifted between restless thoughts and stiff resentment, the weight of their words pressing down harder than the pillow beneath my head. The day crawled by with unbearable normalcy. My parents moved around the house like nothing had happened, like they hadn't been laughing about me the night before. Vesper hummed in the kitchen. Calum joked with Dad over coffee. Mom asked if I wanted pancakes, smiling like everything was fine. I almost wanted to scream. By evening, they called me down for dinner. I could have made an excuse, stayed in my room, but something told me to show up. If they wanted a show, I'd sit front row. The table was set perfectly. Candles, my mother's best dishes, the smell of roast chicken heavy in the air. A birthday dinner, they claimed, but it felt like walking into a lion's den wearing a paper crown. Vesper raised her glass first, flashing me a wide smile. "To our little sister, the serious one," Dad chuckled. "Always so focused, never quite gets the joke." Caleb leaned back in his chair, smirking. "Maybe tonight she'll finally lighten up." Mom chimed in sweetly. "You know, Farah, we just want you to loosen up, sweetheart. You always make things so heavy." I kept my face neutral, slicing into the chicken on my plate, even as my stomach twisted. Vesper added casually, "Maybe tomorrow, when you see what we've got planned, you'll finally smile." Caleb nodded, wiping his mouth. "If she even notices." The table erupted in light laughter. I stayed quiet, chewing slowly, my eyes fixed on my plate. They thought I was too quiet? Good. Let them wonder what I was thinking. After dinner, I helped clear the dishes without a word. Mom hummed beside me at the sink, acting like nothing was off, like they hadn't just mocked me to my face. Typical. Later that night, once everyone had gone upstairs, I sat at the kitchen table alone. The overhead light cast long shadows across the countertop. I reached for the pile of mail near the fridge, flipping absently through overdue bills and grocery lists, until something caught my eye. A legal-sized envelope, half open, the name on it unmistakable. Ambrose Duval, Last Will and Testament. A cold wave passed through me. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. The draft was dated 3 weeks ago. The contents? Everything. The house, the savings, the investments, all to be divided between Vesper and Caleb. My name wasn't mentioned once. Not even out of obligation. My fingers tightened around the paper as if I could will the words to change. They weren't just planning to exclude me from a trip. They had erased me from their lives. Officially, legally. This wasn't neglect. It wasn't ignorance. It was a choice. I sat there for a long time, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the room. Somewhere upstairs, I could hear Mom laughing softly at something on TV. Something inside me shifted then, like a crack running through glass. There was nothing left to hope for. Tomorrow wasn't about celebration. It was about confirmation. As I folded the will back into the envelope and slipped it beneath the pile of mail, I heard the faint buzz of a phone downstairs. A voice. Mom's. Muffled but sharp. "I don't care what she thinks. Just make sure Rowan stays out of this. We don't need her meddling." I froze. They weren't done yet, and now they were targeting the only person left who still stood by me. I stood frozen in the dark, Mom's voice still ringing in my ears. It wasn't enough for them to cut me out. Now, they wanted to cut out Rowan too. The one person who had never made me feel like an afterthought. The next morning, I went through the motions. I brewed coffee. I folded the blanket on the couch. I smiled when Mom greeted me with her overly sweet, "Happy birthday, darling," like she hadn't been scheming the night before. By noon, I had answered a few work emails, forcing myself to look productive, even though my stomach churned. That's when I heard her again. Mom's voice, sharp and deliberate, floating through the half-open kitchen door. "Rowan, sweetheart, I wanted to touch base before tonight." My chest tightened. I edged closer, careful not to make a sound. "We've planned something really special for Farah. It's a family thing, you understand. We wouldn't want her distracted. I'm sure she's told you how sensitive she can be." There was a pause. Then Mom's voice softened, almost syrupy. "If you really care about her, you'll step back and let us handle this." My hands curled into fists. Rowan's voice filtered faintly through the speakerphone. "I don't think she'll see it that way." Mom's reply was instant, cold. "Well, she doesn't need to know. It's what's best for her. We know how to take care of our own." I backed away before I could hear the rest, my heart pounding. They were making sure I had no one left. That evening, dinner was quiet, too quiet. The weight of unspoken words hung heavy around the table. No one mentioned Rowan. No one mentioned anything real. Afterward, I went upstairs, my footsteps deliberate, heavy against the wood. I sat at my desk, staring at my reflection in the dark window. My birthday, the day they'd promised something big. They weren't lying. They were about to erase me completely. I scribbled a note and left it on the kitchen table, the pen pressing hard into the paper. You can plan all you want, but I'm done playing your game. Then I went back upstairs, shutting my door gently but firmly behind me. The next day, sometime in the early afternoon, Rowan's name flashed across my phone screen. Your mom called me, her text read. Said you'd be busy tonight with family. I didn't want to make things harder for you. Let me know when you want to talk. My throat tightened. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. I didn't reply. I couldn't drag her into this any further. The afternoon dragged on, each hour crawling slower than the last. I watched the clock hit 5, then 6, the weight of everything pressing against my chest. The house was too quiet. By 7, I was curled up on my bed, the day nearly done, the silence louder than any celebration they could have planned. That's when my phone buzzed again, a new notification, and when I saw what it was, I knew. This was it, the final push I needed. I grabbed my phone without thinking, thumb swiping across the screen. The notification glowed like a flare in the dark. A photo, posted by Vesper. I tapped it open, and there it was, the final knife in my back. My family, standing on a sunlit beach. All of them. Mom in her favorite sundress, Dad grinning like he hadn't spent the last month tearing me apart. Vesper, flawless as always, her arms slung casually around Caleb's shoulders. Even Aunt Celeste in the background holding a cocktail. The caption hit harder than the image. Finally, a family getaway. No negativity, just fun. #family time, #freedom. Beneath it, a comment from Vesper. Good thing Farah won't notice. She's too boring anyway. I stared at the screen, my stomach twisting. The timestamp on the post? Yesterday. The day before my birthday. The day they all promised to make special. My throat tightened as I swiped through the rest of Vesper's feed. Photo after photo. Dinner by the water, sunset selfies, cocktails lined up on the table. Story clips of them laughing, dancing, living. Without me. They hadn't just left me out. They'd planned this. They'd stolen my tuition money, lied to my face, and spent it on a trip. A celebration of freedom from me. My fingers hovered over the phone, trembling. For a moment, I wanted to throw it across the room, to scream, to let the rage spill out of me like wildfire. But I didn't. Instead, I set it down carefully and walked to the window. Outside, the Charleston streets were still and quiet, the occasional car passing by in the distance. The same streets I'd walked 1,000 times, trying to find my place in a family that never wanted me. I sat down at my desk, pulled my laptop toward me, and opened the folder I'd been building. Screenshots, bank statements, messages, the loan paperwork with my name tied to it. Everything. Piece by piece, I laid it out like a puzzle, the picture finally clear. They hadn't just forgotten me. They had erased me, intentionally, methodically, and tonight, they had made it public. I stopped crying somewhere between saving the last screenshot and renaming the folder, Receipts. The clock read 9:37 p.m. when I finally sat back. My room was dark except for the glow of my screen, my phone still lying face down on the bed. I wasn't sad anymore. I wasn't even angry. I was done. Done letting them decide my worth. Done playing the quiet daughter, the afterthought, the joke. The sound of the front door slamming downstairs startled me. Footsteps moved quickly across the hardwood floor, muffled voices sharp and frantic. I reached for my phone just as another notification lit up the screen. A message, but not from them, from Rowan. And when I read it, I realized their attack wasn't over. This time they were going after the only person I had left. The message from Rowan was short, but it knocked the air out of me. Your mom called me. She told me to leave you alone. She said I'm making everything worse, that I'm a bad influence. Farah, she said if I keep texting you, she'll make sure I lose my scholarship. I read it 3 times before the words finally sank in. They'd threatened her. They hadn't just tried to shut me out. Now they were coming for the only person left who cared about me. My phone slipped from my hand onto the bed as I sat frozen, the weight of their cruelty settling heavy in my chest. It wasn't enough for them to cut me out. They wanted to cut me off, make sure I had no one, nowhere to turn. For a long moment I didn't move. Then something inside me snapped. I stood up, pacing my room like my skin was too tight. Their laughter, their lies, the will, the fake smiles, the beach photos, it all swirled in my head like a storm. And now they were trying to ruin Rowan's life too. I wouldn't let them. I stormed downstairs without thinking, needing to move, needing to breathe. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I passed the kitchen, my eyes catching something out of place on the counter. Mom's old iPad, unlocked. She must have forgotten to log out after checking recipes or her online banking, the way she always did. Normally, I wouldn't care. But tonight wasn't normal. Something told me to look. I picked up the iPad, opened the Messages app out of habit, and there it was. At the top of the list, a group chat. Family without Farah. My heart stopped. I tapped it open, and what I found nearly buckled my knees. Message after message, weeks, months, all of them mocking, scheming, cruel. She's always been so dramatic. Don't tell her about the trip, she'll ruin the vibe. Can't believe she still thinks she's part of this family. Honestly, it'll be easier without her hanging around. Make sure Rowan doesn't drag her back in. Even Dad, even Caleb, even Celeste. Every single one of them, laughing behind my back, erasing me from their lives like I was nothing but noise. My hands shook as I scrolled further. Photos of their family dinners, without me. Plans for their beach trip, months before they told me anything. Even the day they applied for the loan in my name, Seraphine had written, "She'll never notice, she never does." My chest felt hollow, like something had cracked wide open and there was nothing left inside. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I took screenshots, every message, every comment, every plan to humiliate me. Then I closed the iPad gently, carefully, and walked back upstairs like nothing had happened. In my room, I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and added every screenshot to the folder I had been building. Receipts, evidence. I stared at the screen, my pulse steady, my mind clear. The game was over. They wanted me invisible. They wanted me erased. But tomorrow, I'd make sure they could never hide what they'd done. The house was silent when I woke the next morning. The kind of silence that wasn't peaceful. It was empty, hollow, like the aftermath of a storm. But I wasn't empty. I knew exactly what I had to do. After showering, I sat at my desk, pulling my hair back into a tight ponytail, keeping my hands busy so I wouldn't lose focus. There was no more room for doubt, no more space left for hope. I opened my laptop and printed everything, every screenshot, every message, the loan application, the withdrawal slips from the bank account, the group chat, the one they thought I'd never see. I sorted the papers into neat stacks, sliding them into a folder labeled in big black letters, Receipts. It took me over an hour, but when I zipped the folder shut, it felt like I was sealing away the last decade of being invisible. By late afternoon, the front door slammed downstairs, loud voices and luggage thuds filling the space like they hadn't disappeared days ago. I didn't rush. I waited until I heard their footsteps scatter. Mom probably unpacking, Vesper laughing too loudly about something, Dad on the phone. Then I walked downstairs, folder in hand. They were gathered in the living room, still sun-kissed from their little beach escape, chatting casually like they hadn't spent the last week erasing me. Mom noticed me first. "Oh, sweetheart, we've been planning something for you tonight. It'll be so special," Vesper chimed in from the couch. "Yeah, you're gonna love it. We figured you could use a little surprise." Dad barely glanced up from his phone. "Glad you finally came downstairs. We were wondering when you'd join us." I set the folder down on the dining table, flipping it open without a word. They all fell quiet. "What's this?" Caleb asked, voice tightening. I looked at them, really looked, for the first time in weeks. "This," I said calmly, "is who you really are." One by one, I slid the papers across the table. The screenshots from the group chat, the bank records, the loan in my name, the photo album from their beach trip, the comments about how boring and negative I was, the threats against Rowan. Vesper's smile disappeared first. Mom's hands started to fidget. Dad set his phone down slowly, the tension sharp in his jaw. For the first time, none of them had anything to say. I stood there in the middle of the room, not waiting for their apologies, because I knew they wouldn't come. I took a slow breath and said the words I had rehearsed in my head all night. I'm done. Mom blinked like she hadn't heard me right. Farah, sweetheart. No, I cut her off, my voice steady. You've made it clear. You've been making it clear for years. I'm not part of this family, so I won't be your scapegoat anymore. I slid one final paper toward them. A list of my accounts, my tuition paperwork, everything I had moved out of their control. I'm moving out, I said simply, and I will no longer pay for any of this. For you. Dad scoffed, trying to regain control. Farah, don't be dramatic. You're misunderstanding. I understand perfectly, I replied. I understand more than you ever wanted me to. I turned to leave, but before I reached the stairs, I paused. If any of you try to manipulate me again, I said without looking back, I'll make sure everyone sees what's in that folder. I walked upstairs, my legs trembling but my back straight. For the first time, the silence in the house wasn't suffocating. It felt like freedom. But even after all this, one question lingered. Would they ever truly regret it? The next morning, the house felt heavier than ever. No one spoke at breakfast. The folder I had left on the dining table was still there, untouched, like a loaded gun no one dared to pick up. I ate quietly at the counter, while Mom moved stiffly around the kitchen, her movements sharper than usual. Vesper wasn't there. She hadn't come home the night before. Dad scrolled his phone without looking at me. It was over. But the weight of what remained wasn't something I could shake off in a day. That afternoon, as sunlight filtered through the blinds, Seraphine finally broke the silence. You've always been so dramatic, Farah, she muttered, rinsing a mug at the sink. You act like we were monsters. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. You never understood, she continued, her voice brittle. How hard it was to love someone who kept pushing us away. I turned to look at her then. Really look. Her face wasn't angry. It wasn't even apologetic. It was defensive. Cornered. Because the truth wasn't that I pushed them away. It was that they'd been pushing me out for years. That night, Vesper came home, slammed her bedroom door without a word. Caleb avoided me completely. Dad never even looked up from his emails. Not one of them apologized. Not one. 2 days later, I walked out of that house for good. With Rowan's help, I signed a lease on a tiny one-bedroom apartment not far from campus. It wasn't much. Cracked linoleum floors, outdated cabinets. But it was mine. Every box I unpacked felt like peeling away another layer of who they told me I was. Invisible, forgettable. A footnote, not anymore. When I filed to remove my parents as financial guardians, Seraphine called twice. I didn't pick up. Her last voicemail was short. You'll regret this. But I didn't. Instead, I shared my story anonymously on a student forum. Not the financial details, not the lawsuits that had already started brewing behind the scenes. Just the simple truth. Sometimes, the people who say they love you will also be the ones who erase you. And you don't owe them your silence. I never expected the flood of replies. Students, strangers, even professors who wrote, I've been there. You're not alone. It didn't fix everything. But it reminded me that I wasn't broken. The fallout came fast after that. The university launched an investigation into the misuse of my tuition funds. Seraphine's name appeared in formal reports. Identity fraud, financial misconduct. Dad's business partners quietly backed away once the whispers reached them. Clients stopped calling. Vesper vanished from social media. Caleb never said a word. Months passed. Spring melted into summer, the heat settling heavy over Charleston's streets. One Saturday, I found myself walking past the old city park. The one where, years ago, they had forgotten me on a bench and laughed about it afterward like it was nothing. I paused at the entrance, watching the kids on the swings, the parents chatting on benches. That forgotten version of me, small, scared, waiting, wasn't here anymore. They tried to erase me, but I've never seen myself clearer. As I turned to leave, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A new message, not from them. It was from Rowan. Check your mailbox, I left something for you. I smiled. Small, real, because life always writes new chapters, even after the worst ones. Before I close this chapter, let me tell you something. Not as the girl who was forgotten on her 20th birthday, but as someone who finally stopped waiting for people to see her worth. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most will be the ones who hurt you the deepest. But their choices don't define who you are. You do. You are not invisible. You are not too much, too quiet, too serious, too anything. You are exactly enough, and you don't need anyone's permission to exist fully, to stand up for yourself, to rewrite your story. Family isn't always who you share blood with. Sometimes, family is who shows up when everyone else leaves. So now I want to hear from you. Have you ever felt like the outsider in your own home? Have you ever had to walk away from people you thought would always be there? If this story touched something in you, drop A in the comments or tell me where you're watching from. And if you didn't like this story, tell me why. I want to know your perspective. This space is for real conversations. If you want more stories like this, raw, real, sometimes messy, but always honest, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Thank you for watching, for listening, for seeing me.
I never believed fairy tales could be real until I got my very own evil stepmother. But let me start from the beginning. My name is Kimberly, and my childhood was what most people would call normal, maybe even lucky. My parents were successful business people, and we lived in a beautiful two-story house in New York. Dad worked hard to build his company from scratch, while Mom had her own interests. She was hardly ever home, always out with her friends, especially her best friend, Julie. They were inseparable, getting their nails done, having long lunches at fancy cafes, and shopping at expensive stores. I remember sitting at the kitchen table doing my homework alone while Dad heated up another microwave dinner. "Where's Mom?" I'd ask, even though I already knew. "She's out with Julie again, sweetheart," Dad would say, trying not to sound sad. Then he'd add, "But hey, let's make this dinner special. I got your favorite ice cream for dessert." Dad always tried his best to make things okay, but even he couldn't stop what happened when I was 8. That day is still crystal clear in my mind. Mom came home late, as usual, but instead of sneaking off to her room, she called for a family meeting. "I'm leaving," she said, her voice calm in a strange way. "I've fallen in love with someone else. We're moving to Europe next month. You can have full custody of Kimberly." Just like that, my mom disappeared from my life. The next day, she packed her things and left, leaving behind a heartbroken dad and a confused 8-year-old who couldn't understand why her mom didn't want her. That's when Julie started coming around more often. At first, I was happy to see her. She was familiar, a connection to my mom. She cooked dinner for us, helped me with homework, and cleaned the house. She was everything Mom hadn't been. Dad seemed happier whenever she was around. A few months later, they started dating, and 7 months after Mom left, Dad announced they were getting married. I remember feeling so happy and relieved. Julie had been so kind and caring. Maybe she could be the mother I'd been missing. "Are you happy about this, Kimberly?" Dad asked after telling me about their engagement. "Yes," I said, nodding with excitement. "Julie's nice. She takes care of us." The wedding was beautiful, and Julie looked amazing in her white dress. During the reception, she hugged me and whispered, "We're going to be such a happy family." And I believed her. Oh, I really believed her. While they were on their honeymoon, I stayed at Grandma's house, Dad's mom. Those were the last truly peaceful days I'd have for a long time. When I came back from Grandma's, I knew right away that something had changed. As soon as I walked through the door, I felt it. Julie was sitting at the kitchen table, sitting up straight with her hands folded neatly. Dad was there too, looking uncomfortable. "Kimberly," Julie said. Her voice didn't have its usual warmth. "We need to talk about some changes." I sat down, still wearing my backpack. Dad looked at the floor, avoiding my eyes. "Your father and I have been talking about how you're being raised," Julie said, her eyes locked on me. "I've noticed some troubling similarities between you and your mother." "What do you mean?" I asked, feeling a knot in my stomach. "The way you act, your attitude. It's clear you need more structure and discipline." She turned to Dad. "Don't you agree, honey? We don't want her turning out like her mother." I looked at Dad, hoping he'd stand up for me. But he just frowned a little and said, well, maybe a little more structure could help. Julie patted his hand quickly. Don't worry, darling. You're so busy with work. Let me handle this. And just like that, my life completely changed. The next day, Julie introduced her new rules. First, my clothes. We'll only shop at sales from now on, she said. Designer clothes are a waste of money for a growing girl. But that was just the start. The next weekend, when Dad usually gave me my weekly allowance, Julie stepped in. About your pocket money, she said, smiling in a way that didn't feel friendly. From now on, you'll have to earn it. Straight A's only. If you get even one B, no allowance for the week. But Dad I started to protest, but Julie cut me off. I started to argue. Your father agrees with me, Julie said sharply, cutting me off. Don't you, dears? Dad, focused on his work laptop, barely looked up. Listen to Julie, Kimberly. She knows what's best, he said absent-mindedly. The rules got stricter every week. Julie even started keeping a notebook where she wrote down every little thing I did wrong. One morning, I left for school without making my bed. Into the notebook it went. Left a glass on the counter instead of putting it in the dishwasher? In the notebook. Homework done but not put neatly in my folder? Another mark. Every Monday, she'd sit me down and go through her list. Bed unmade on Tuesday. Dishes left out on Saturday. Room not vacuumed on Sunday, she'd read with a smug tone. Then she'd close the notebook and say, well, no pocket money this week either. Maybe you'll try harder next week. It felt like my old life was slipping away, replaced by endless rules and punishments. But the worst part wasn't the rules. It was how Julie had changed. She wasn't the kind, caring woman I thought she was. Now, she seemed to enjoy pointing out my mistakes. And my dad? The man who used to stand up for me had become a silent bystander. He was always too busy with work to notice what was happening at home. I tried talking to Dad about it, hoping he'd listen. One evening, I caught him in his home office when he wasn't on a call. Dad, can we talk? I asked. He barely looked up from his computer. What is it, Kimberly? I'm really busy right now. It's about Julie and all these rules. Don't you think they're a bit much? He sighed and finally stopped typing. Look, honey, I know things have changed, but Julie is doing all the hard work around here. She's running the house while I'm focused on the business. We should be grateful for that. But Dad. Not now, Kimberly, he interrupted. I have a conference call in 6 minutes. The only person who seemed to see through Julie was Grandma. She visited one day and overheard Julie scolding me for leaving a textbook on the coffee table. This is ridiculous. Grandma snapped. She's a child, not a soldier in boot camp. What followed was a huge argument. Julie cried to Dad, playing the victim perfectly. Your mother doesn't respect my role in this family, she sobbed. How can? I can't raise Kimberly properly with you constantly interfering, Julie told Grandma during one of their fights. As usual, Dad took Julie's side. If you can't support my wife, he said to Grandma, maybe you should stop coming around for a while. Just like that, Grandma's regular visits ended. But I still found my way to her house after school whenever I could. She only lived 20 blocks away, and those visits became my escape. Don't let her break your spirit, sweetheart, Grandma would tell me, slipping me $50. Hide this where she won't find it. I became an expert at hiding things, money, small gifts from Grandma, even my feelings. Under my bed, there was a loose floorboard where I kept my secret stash. Whenever Julie's inspections got worse, I'd touch that floorboard and remind myself that at least one person cared about me. Then came the conversation that changed everything. One night, when I was 16, I went to the kitchen for water and heard voices coming from my parents' room. The door was slightly open, and I froze when I heard Julie's words. She doesn't deserve to have you pay for her college, Julie was saying. You've seen her attitude just like her mother. If you keep spoiling her, she'll turn out the same way, running off and abandoning her family. I held my breath, waiting for Dad to defend me. The silence was unbearable. Maybe you're right, Dad said finally, sounding unsure. But we did promise. Promises to ungrateful children don't count, Julie interrupted. Think about it, darling. We could use that money for our future instead. I didn't stay to hear the rest. Back in my room, I lay awake for hours, Julie's words echoing in my head. I realized her control over Dad would only get stronger. If I wanted a future, I'd have to create it myself. That night, I made a decision. I would work harder than ever. Every free moment would go to studying. I would earn a full scholarship to college, no matter what it took. The next 3 years were a blur of schoolwork, clubs, and competitions. I joined every academic group I could: debate team, science club, math club. Weekends were for studying or traveling to state competitions. Slowly, my trophy shelf filled up. First place in the state science fair. Top speaker at the regional debate championship. Perfect score on the math Olympiad. Julie hated it. Every achievement seemed to annoy her more. But she couldn't complain anymore, not when teachers were calling home to praise me, or when local newspapers featured my accomplishments. Finally, graduation day came. I had done it, a full scholarship to West Virginia University in the neighboring state. The acceptance letter had arrived 3 weeks earlier, but I had been waiting for the right moment to share the news. I chose to celebrate with dinner after graduation, thinking that maybe, just for today, even Julie couldn't ruin things. I got into West Virginia, I announced, still wearing my graduation gown. Full academic scholarship. Dad's face lit up. That's amazing, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you. For a moment, everything felt perfect. But then Julie wrapped her arms around Dad's shoulders, and her face shifted into that fake, sweet expression I had grown to hate. "Oh, honey," she cooed. "That's such wonderful news. But you know what would make it even better? If Kimberly learned the value of true independence." Dad turned to her, confused. "What do you mean?" "Well," Julie said, her voice dripping with fake concern, "we shouldn't spoil her too much. The scholarship is great, but maybe she should pay for her own housing, get a job, and learn some responsibility." I stared in disbelief as Dad nodded slowly. "That actually makes sense." Something inside me snapped. All the years of frustration, all the silent suffering, came rushing out at once. "Makes sense?" I stood up so fast my chair toppled over. "Nothing about this makes sense. You've let her control everything for years. She's turned this house into a prison, and you just sit there and nod at whatever she says." "Kimberly," Dad started, but I wasn't done. "You had money saved for my college. I know you did. I heard you talking about it years ago. But let me guess, Julie, you convinced him to spend it on something else, didn't you? Just like you convinced him to stop letting Grandma visit, to stop being my father." Julie's face turned red with anger. "How dare you?" she screamed, jumping up from her chair. "After everything we've done for you, is this how you show gratitude?" "Gratitude?" I laughed bitterly. "For what? For making my teenage years miserable? For taking away my weekly allowance? For controlling every part of my life?" Julie spun to face Dad, her eyes suddenly filling with tears. "See," she said, her voice shaking. "This is exactly what I've been warning you about. She doesn't respect you at all. All she cares about is money, 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 just like her mother." I watched Dad's face change. His expression hardened into something cold and unfamiliar. He stood up slowly, his hands trembling. "Get out," he said quietly. I froze, not understanding. "Julie's right," he continued. "You've become just like your mother, selfish, ungrateful, only thinking about yourself. I won't have another woman like that in my house. Pack your things and leave." His words hit me like a punch to the stomach. Behind Dad's shoulder, I could see Julie smirking. I saw Julie smirk, quickly hidden behind her hand, as if she was pretending to be upset. I ran upstairs to my room, tears streaming down my face. My hands shook as I packed my clothes into a suitcase, grabbed my awards and photos, and emptied the stash I had hidden under the floorboard. Downstairs, I could still hear Julie's voice, pretending to comfort Dad. "It's not your fault, honey. Some people just can't be helped." Grandma's house was only a 20-minute drive away, but it felt like hours. When she opened the door and saw my tear-streaked face, she pulled me into a tight hug. "He kicked me out," I sobbed into her shoulder. "He said I'm just like Mom. "Your father's a fool," she said firmly, helping me carry my bags inside. "But you're not going to let them win. You're stronger than that." I stayed with Grandma all summer, working at a local bookstore to save money. She helped me look for apartments near West Virginia University, and when August came, she handed me an envelope. "It's not much," she said, "but it should cover your first few months' rent. The rest is up to you." College was tough at first. I found a tiny studio apartment I could barely afford and got a job as a waitress at a cafe near campus. My schedule was exhausting: morning classes, afternoons in the library, evening shifts at the cafe, and homework late into the night. But it was worth it. Whenever I felt like giving up, I remembered Julie's smirk, and it pushed me to keep going. The years flew by. I made friends, got top grades, and started building a new life. My phone never rang with calls from home, not on my birthdays, not on holidays, not even when I made the dean's list every semester. The only connection to my old life was Grandma, who called me every Sunday without fail. After graduation, I got a job offer from Anderson and Mitchell, one of the top consulting firms in the city. The starting salary was more than enough for me to rent a nice one-bedroom apartment in a good neighborhood. I framed my diploma and hung it next to my job offer letter, proof that I had made it on my own. I met Henry at a coffee shop near my office. It was such a cliché. I literally bumped into him while rushing to get my morning latte, spilling his drink all over his suit. I insisted on buying him a new one, and somehow, that led to dinner that same evening. Henry was different from anyone I'd ever met. Henry was unlike anyone I had ever met, kind, genuine, and completely devoted to his family. When I met his parents, I saw what a real, loving family looked like for the first time. After a year of dating, Henry took me back to the coffee shop where we first met. Right there, he got down on one knee and pulled out a beautiful diamond ring. "Kimberly," he said, his voice shaking a little, "will you marry me?" Through tears of joy, I said yes. The whole coffee shop cheered and clapped. Later that night, I posted a photo on Instagram, me showing off the ring, Henry kissing my cheek, and both of us smiling like fools. Exactly 1 week later, I got a call at work. The number was unknown, but something made me pick up. "Hello," I said. "Kimberly," a voice said, sending a chill down my spine. "It's been a while." "Julie." My grip on the phone tightened. "How did you get my number?" "Oh, I have my ways," she said with a soft laugh. "I saw your engagement announcement. Such a lovely ring. You must be so excited to plan the wedding. What do you want?" I asked, trying to keep calm. "To help, of course," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. Every bride deserves to have her father walk her down the aisle. My heart skipped a beat. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about a deal, dear. A simple transaction. $50,000, and I'll convince your father to reconcile with you. I'll make sure he's there to walk you down the aisle on your big day." I felt sick. "And if I say no?" She chuckled. "Let's just say your father won't be attending the wedding. You know how he is, he does everything I tell him to do. I manage all our money, and that fool doesn't even question where it goes." Her voice grew smug as she continued. "Remember when I convinced him to kick you out? So easy. Men are such simple creatures. A few tears, the right words, and they'll believe anything. Your father is especially stupid like that." My hand started shaking, but it wasn't from fear. With my other hand, I quietly opened the voice recorder app on my work phone and pressed record. Julie kept talking, spilling details about her years of lies and manipulation. "So," she said finally, "what do you say, dear? 50,000 is a small price to pay for a father's love, isn't it?" I forced my voice to stay steady. "I need to think about it," I said. "Don't take too long." "The offer expires in a week," Julie replied before hanging up. I sat at my desk, staring at the recording on my phone. 10 minutes and 35 seconds of Julie showing her true self. 7 minutes that could change everything. That evening, I played the recording for Henry in our apartment. With every second, his face grew darker. "We need to send this to your father right now," he said, reaching for his phone. I stopped him, placing my hand over his. "No, I have a better idea," I said, smiling as I opened my laptop. She's always worked so hard to keep up her perfect image. Let's see how she feels when the truth is out there for everyone to see. I uploaded the recording to my social media with a simple caption. My stepmother's wedding gift demand, $50,000 to let my father walk me down the aisle. Listen to the end. The response was instant. Within hours, the post had hundreds of shares. Comments poured in, many from people who knew Julie personally. I can't believe this is the same woman who runs our church committee. She told me you abandoned your family. I'm so sorry I believed her. This explains how she got that new car last year. The truth about Julie spread like wildfire through our small town. Her perfect image shattered piece by piece, post by post, share by share. 4 days later, my phone rang. It was Dad. Can you come home? He asked, his voice shaky like he'd been crying. Please, Kimberly. We need to talk. The next day, I made the 5-hour drive back to my childhood home. From the outside, the house looked the same, but something felt different. Julie's fancy SUV wasn't in the driveway, and her prized rose bushes were overgrown. Dad opened the door before I could knock. He looked older, tired, with more gray in his hair than I remembered. We stood there awkwardly for a moment before he pulled me into a tight hug. Inside, the house was quiet, too quiet. There was no sign of Julie. She's gone, Dad said, answering the question I hadn't asked. I kicked her out the day after I heard that recording. I filed for divorce the next morning. He slumped into his favorite armchair, looking defeated. I've been such a fool, Kimberly. All these years, I was so blind. She manipulated me, turned me against you, against my own mother. His voice cracked. I believed every lie she told me. I let her destroy our family. Tears rolled down his face as he looked at me. I threw you out, my own daughter. I chose her over you. How can you ever forgive me? I sat on the arm of Dad's chair, just like I used to when I was little. I forgive you, Dad, I said. He looked up, surprised, but I wasn't finished. I need time. We can't just pretend those years didn't happen. We need to rebuild our relationship slowly. The next 7 months were all about healing. Dad and I started with weekly phone calls. At first, they felt awkward, but over time, they became more natural. We met for coffee every other weekend, sometimes just the two of us, sometimes with Henry joining us. Grandma started visiting the house again, and seeing Dad work to rebuild his relationship with her made me believe in second chances. Meanwhile, the divorce went forward. Julie tried to take half of everything, but Dad's lawyer used the recording as proof of her lies and manipulation. In the end, she got far less than she wanted. She moved out of state, and rumors said she was already looking for her next victim, but we never heard from her again. Dad started therapy to work through his guilt and to understand how he had let himself be controlled for so long. During one of our coffee meetings, he shared something that helped me finally understand those lost years. After your mom left, he said, stirring his coffee, I was so scared of failing you that I let someone else take over. I thought I was protecting you, but really, I was just running away from my responsibilities as a father. Planning the wedding brought us even closer. Dad insisted on helping with everything, from finding the venue to taste testing cakes. He even joined Henry's family for the rehearsal dinner and fit in perfectly with their warm, lively group. On the morning of my wedding, Dad arrived early at the bridal suite. He looked so handsome in his tuxedo, but his hands were shaking as he knocked on the door. Ready for this? He asked, his voice trembling slightly. I was already in my dress, with Grandma adjusting my veil. I've been ready for this moment my whole life, Dad, I said. He took my hand, and we stood together behind the church doors. The wedding march began to play. Kimberly, he whispered, his voice filled with emotion, I know I missed so many important moments in your life, but I promise you, I'll be here for all the ones to come. The doors opened, and we started walking down the aisle. I saw Henry standing at the altar, smiling brighter than ever. I saw our friends and family, all beaming with happiness. Grandma was in the front row, already dabbing at her eyes. But mostly, I felt at peace. I felt my dad's arm steady and strong under my hand, finally being the support I had always needed. At the altar, when the minister asked, Who gives this woman to be married? Dad's voice was clear and confident. Her grandmother, and I do, he said. Later, at the reception, I saw Dad dancing with Grandma. They were both laughing like they hadn't in years. Henry came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. Happy? He asked. I leaned back against him, taking in the scene, my family, broken and then rebuilt, stronger than I ever thought it could be. People say you can't choose your family, but that's not completely true. Sometimes you have to lose your family to find it again. Sometimes a happy ending isn't about everything being perfect. It's about loving the imperfect pieces and building something new. Julie has been gone from our lives for months now, and good riddance. But in a strange way, I'm almost grateful for what happened. Without the darkness she brought, I might never have realized how strong I could be or felt the joy of rebuilding what was broken. I never asked to be born, and honestly, my parents didn't plan for me either. My mom always says she was young and in love with a guy who couldn't stay loyal. Next thing she knew, she was pregnant with me. My name's Brenda. The mistake. Mom wanted to get rid of me, but both sets of grandparents stepped in and stopped her. Back then, raising kids alone wasn't an option, so my parents got married, and I came along, kicking and screaming 7 months later. Dad never let me forget that I ruined his life. There goes my youth, he'd mutter every time he saw me. To him, I wasn't a daughter, just something holding him back from the life he wanted. For 8 years, it was just the three of us in a small house, me trying to stay out of Dad's way, Mom cooking and cleaning like her life depended on it, and Dad coming home from work with a scowl that got worse when he looked at me. Then came the miracle, my little sister Emma. She was the child they actually wanted. From then on, I was pushed to the background. Brenda, watch your sister. Brenda, be quiet, Emma's sleeping. Brenda, why can't you be more like Emma? Everything was about Emma. She got new clothes, I got hand-me-downs. She got praise, I got scolded. She got love, and I got used to being ignored. By the time I was 8, I was doing most of the housework, cleaning toilets, mopping floors, dusting shelves, you name it, I did it. But no one ever thanked me. It was just expected. The one thing I didn't mind was cooking. Mixing ingredients and creating flavors felt like magic to me. I remember the first time I made my special lasagna for a family gathering. My Aunt Amy took a bite and said, "Rebecca, this is incredible. When did you become such a great cook?" Mom smiled and soaked up the praise while I stood in the corner, invisible as always. "Actually, I made it," I said quietly. Aunt Amy laughed like it was a joke. "Brenda likes to help in the kitchen sometimes," Mom quickly said, still enjoying the compliments. I shut my mouth, knowing it didn't matter. No one ever believed me anyway. As I grew up, the kitchen became my safe place. While Emma got all the attention and gifts, I found peace in cooking. By high school, I could make a pot roast even Dad couldn't complain about. "Not bad," he'd grunt while eating. Coming from him, that was high praise. But for me, it wasn't just about feeding my family. I had big dreams. Every night, I'd close my eyes and imagine it my own restaurant, full of happy people enjoying the food I created. One night at dinner, I couldn't keep it in anymore. "I want to open a restaurant someday," I said. The silence was unbearable. Then Emma laughed. "You? A restaurant?" Mom looked worried, like I'd said I wanted to be an astronaut. Dad didn't even look up from his plate. "Restaurants fail, all the time. You'd be broke in a month," he said. "But I'm good at cooking," I protested. "Everyone likes my food." "Everyone likes free food," Dad scoffed. "Doesn't mean they'd pay for it." Emma chimed in with a fake sweet voice. "Maybe you could work at KFC's, Brenda. They're always hiring." When it was time for college, I had my heart set on the best culinary school I could find. To my surprise, Dad agreed to pay for it. "This is your inheritance," he said roughly. "Don't expect anything else. The house, the savings, that's all going to Emma." I should have been hurt, but I was too excited about culinary school to care. It was my chance to prove myself, to learn from real chefs and get better at what I loved. College was a whirlwind of chopping, sautéing, and baking. For the first time, I felt like I belonged. My classmates appreciated my cooking, and my instructors praised my creativity. But when I graduated, reality hit hard. With no money for my own place, I had to move back home. The difference between my exciting college life and my family's indifference was huge. "So, you're a chef now," Emma smirked at dinner. "Does that mean you'll be doing all the cooking from now on?" Before I could answer, Mom jumped in. "That's a great idea. Brenda can cook, and you can focus on your studies, dear." Just like that, I was back to being the family maid, only this time with a culinary degree gathering dust on my shelf. I did manage to get a job as an assistant chef at a local restaurant. The pay wasn't great, but it was a start. Every night, I'd come home tired, only to be handed a list of chores. "This is your rent," Mom would say. "You're not a child anymore. You need to contribute." But I didn't let it break me. Every spare moment, I kept dreaming, planning, and working toward my goal. I knew that someday I'd have my own restaurant. And when that day came, I'd show them what I was really capable of. 4 years dragged by, each day just like the last, cooking, cleaning, and dreaming of something better. I worked really hard at the restaurant while watching Emma get everything I ever wanted. The day Emma started high school, Dad came home grinning. "Emma, honey," he called out, "come see what I got you." We all went outside, and sitting in the driveway, like some shiny slap in the face, was a brand new car. A car? But I don't even know how to drive yet. Emma said, her eyes wide. Dad laughed, tossing her the keys. "You will soon enough. My girl deserves the best from the start." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. When I turned 14, all I got was a secondhand bike, and that was only because I needed it to get to my part-time job. But for Emma, it didn't stop there. Every week, there was something new for her: a new iPhone, a MacBook Pro, designer clothes. They even remodeled her bedroom, making it look like a luxury hotel room. Meanwhile, I was still in my old room, with the same faded wallpaper and the same creaky bed I'd had since I was 8. At least the spiders kept me company. I started thinking about moving out. Maybe I could find a roommate and share rent on a tiny apartment. Anything would be better than this constant reminder that I didn't matter. Then Christmas came around. I had been saving up, determined to get everyone nice gifts for once, to show them I wasn't the failure they thought I was. I ended up buying lottery tickets for everyone, not the cheap scratch-offs, but tickets for the big jackpot. Christmas morning, I handed out the envelopes, trying not to seem too eager. Mom opened hers first, and her face fell. "Oh, lottery tickets," she said. Dad snorted. "What is this, a gas station gift?" Emma didn't even open hers. She just rolled her eyes. "Gee, thanks, Brenda." Real thoughtful. Then Mom chimed in, her voice sickly sweet. "Well, I guess since Brenda didn't really get us anything, she won't be expecting any gifts either." That seems fair, doesn't it? A lump formed in my throat. Without a word, I grabbed the lottery tickets back from Dad's hand. "You know what? I'll take them. Merry bloody Christmas." I stormed out, ignoring their shocked faces. Screw the family dinner. I texted my coworker, Evelyn. "Hey, you still at the restaurant? Mind some company." An hour later, I was sitting at the bar of the closed restaurant, sipping cheap champagne with Evelyn. As the night went on, we shared stories about terrible families and crushed dreams. It wasn't a perfect Christmas, but at least I didn't feel so alone. A few days later, I was at work as usual. During my break, I checked my phone and saw a missed call from an unknown number. "Probably just another scam," I muttered, tossing the phone aside. But then it rang again, the same number. Curiosity got the better of me, so I answered. "Hello, is this Brenda Thompson?" A cheerful voice asked. "Yeah, who's this?" I replied. "This is Amy from the State Lottery Commission. I'm calling to inform you that you're holding a winning ticket." I almost dropped the phone. "Are you serious?" "Absolutely. One of your tickets matched all the numbers in the Christmas drawing. After taxes, your winnings come to $750,000. The world spun around me. I couldn't believe it. This was my chance to finally open my own restaurant and show everyone what I was capable of. I rushed home, my heart racing with excitement. I burst through the front door. "You won't believe what happened," I said, barely able to contain myself. My family was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at me like I was crazy. "I won the lottery," I blurted out. "One of the tickets, the one I was going to give Mom, it won $750,000 after taxes." For a moment, there was stunned silence. Then Emma's voice cut through the air. "That money belongs to us," she screeched. "You bought those tickets as gifts for Mom and Dad, and anything that's theirs is mine." It felt like a slap in the face. "What?" "No, they gave the tickets back to me. They're mine." Mom and Dad exchanged a look. "Brenda," Dad said slowly, "be reasonable. You live under our roof, you owe us. Now hand over that ticket. We'll take care of everything." I took a step back, instinctively placing my hand over my pocket where the ticket was. "No," I said, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. "This is my ticket, my win, and I'm going to use it to open my own restaurant." Dad's face turned red with anger. "Now you listen here, young lady." "No, you listen," I shouted, all my frustration finally spilling out. "I've spent my whole life being treated like I don't matter in this family. Well, not anymore. This is my chance, and I'm taking it." "If that's how you feel," Mom said coldly, "then you can get out of this house. Now." I stared at them, my own family, who were supposed to love me no matter what. In that moment, I saw them clearly for the first time. "Fine," I whispered. "I'm gone." I stormed up to my room, threw some clothes and essentials into a bag, and walked out. They watched me leave, probably thinking I'd come crawling back in a day or two. They couldn't have been more wrong. My first stop was the lottery office to claim my winnings, and then I went straight to a real estate agent. "I need an apartment," I told the surprised agent. "Something available right away." By that evening, I was sitting in my very own place. It wasn't much, just a small one-bedroom in a decent part of town, but it was mine, all mine. Sitting on the floor, I hadn't bought furniture yet, eating takeout, and scrolling through restaurant equipment catalogs on my phone, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. The first thing I needed was a solid business plan. I spent weeks hunched over my laptop, researching, crunching numbers, and planning every detail. After what felt like a million revisions, I finally had a plan I was proud of. Next step, finding the right location. I searched the city until I found it a small, rundown space that had been empty for years. The landlord almost laughed when I told him I wanted to turn it into a restaurant. "Good luck with that, sweetheart," he said, chuckling as he handed me the keys. I spent the next 5 months transforming that dump into my dream. I hired contractors, chose every fixture, and scrubbed every inch myself. It was tough work, but every blister and bruise felt like a badge of honor. Finally, opening day arrived. I stood in the kitchen, my kitchen, surrounded by the staff I had personally chosen and trained. The first order came in, and I felt a rush of excitement. "Let's do this," I said, tying on my apron. The first few months were a whirlwind. I worked 15-hour days, cooking, managing, and doing whatever was needed. Slowly but surely, word started to spread. People loved my food, not just for the taste but for the love and creativity I poured into every dish. I introduced a loyalty program for regular customers, giving them special discounts and early access to new menu items. It was a hit. Soon, I had a group of regulars who came in so often they felt like family. But I didn't stop there. I set up a delivery service, partnering with local couriers to bring my food right to people's homes. It was a risk, and managing quality was tough at first, but it paid off. Social media became my best tool. I posted daily specials, behind-the-scenes kitchen videos, and engaged with customers online. My follower count grew, and so did my customer base. For years in, I was finally turning a profit. It wasn't huge, but it was something, and it was all mine. I started looking for a second location to open another restaurant. In some ways, it was easier because I knew what I was doing, but in other ways, it was harder. I couldn't be everywhere at once anymore, so I had to learn to trust my staff to keep up my standards when I wasn't there. But we made it work, and 6 years later, I opened a third location. Before I knew it, I was the owner of a successful chain of restaurants, me, Brenda Thompson, the girl who was never supposed to succeed. It wasn't easy. There were nights when I cried myself to sleep, wondering if I was in over my head. There were days when I wanted to quit. But every time I walked into one of my restaurants, saw the happy customers, and smelled the amazing food, I knew it was all worth it. One regular Thursday, I was in my office going over the books for my newest restaurant when my phone rang. I looked at the screen and froze. It was a number I hadn't seen in years. Home. I almost let it go to voicemail, but curiosity got the better of me. I answered cautiously. Hello? Brenda, it's Mom. Her voice sounded awkward. Look, I know we've had our differences, but we need your help. It's about Emma. Of course it was. It was always about Emma. What about her? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Dad got on the line. She's in trouble, Brenda. She lost her job. They're accusing her of theft, and now no one will hire her. We were hoping you might have a job for her at one of your restaurants. I almost laughed. After everything they'd put me through, they had the nerve to ask me for a favor. But then I thought about Emma. No matter what, she was still my sister. Let me talk to her, I said. Emma came on the line, sounding small and scared. Brenda, I'm sorry for everything. I really need help. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Okay, I said. I'll give you a job, but no special treatment. If you mess up, you're out. Got it? Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Emma said, relieved. The next morning, Emma showed up right on time, looking nervous but determined. I put her to work as an administrator, starting her with simple tasks and gradually giving her more responsibility. To my surprise, she took it seriously. She was focused during training, asked good questions, and didn't complain. One night, after we finished closing the restaurant, Emma broke down in tears. I need to tell you the truth, she sobbed. I didn't steal anything from my last job. My boss tried to force himself on me. When I refused, he fired me and spread rumors that I was a thief. A wave of anger rose in me. Why didn't you report him? Who would believe me over him? Emma wiped her eyes. I was so scared, Brenda. I didn't know what to do. I believe you, I said. I believe you, I said, pulling Emma into a hug. And I'm going to help you, okay? We'll figure this out together. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into teaching Emma everything I knew about running a restaurant. She soaked it all up like a sponge, eager to learn and prove herself. Watching her confidently handle a busy rush of customers, I felt both proud and uneasy. Emma was learning fast and working hard, but a small voice in the back of my mind warned me not to let my guard down completely. At first, everything seemed perfect. Emma worked harder than I'd ever seen her before. She was always the first to arrive and the last to leave, taking on extra shifts and volunteering for the toughest tasks. But then, I started hearing whispers. At first, I thought it was just gossip, but the rumors kept growing louder. One day, Kyle, my head chef, pulled me aside. I think you need to know something, he said. Your sister, she's been saying some things, stirring up trouble. A chill ran down my spine. What kind of things? Kyle looked uncomfortable. She's telling people they're underpaid, and that you're keeping all the profits for yourself. She's even suggested that we go on strike. I couldn't believe it. That's ridiculous. You all know how tight our margins are. I've always been open about the finances. We know, boss, Kyle assured me. None of us believe her, but there's more. She's been telling people that the restaurant rightfully belongs to her, that you somehow cheated her out of her share of the family money. It felt like a punch to the gut. After everything I'd done for her, this was how she repaid me? That evening, I confronted Emma, my hands shaking with anger and disappointment. What the hell do you think you're doing? I demanded. Emma looked at me with wide, innocent eyes. What are you talking about, sis? I laid out everything I'd heard. To my shock, Emma just shrugged. Oh, that, she said casually. I was just testing the staff's loyalty, making sure they wouldn't turn on you. Looks like they passed with flying colors. I wanted to believe her, really, I did. But there was something in her eyes, a cold, calculating glint that made me hesitate. Before I could say more, there was a frantic knock on my office door. Isabella, my assistant manager, burst in, looking pale and scared. Brenda, we've got a problem, she said. There's a big shortage in the cash register. Over $7,000 is missing. We spent the next few hours going through the books, checking and double-checking the numbers. There was no mistake, a lot of cash had disappeared. Only 6 people had access to that register: Isabella, Kyle, and Emma. Isabella and Kyle had been with me since the beginning, through all the ups and downs. I trusted Isabella and Kyle completely. As if reading my thoughts, Emma came over and whispered, "You know, I've seen Isabella staying late a lot lately. And she did just buy that fancy new car." Watching Emma walk away, I knew I had a big decision to make. I couldn't ignore this, too much was at stake. My business, my reputation, and the jobs of all my loyal employees. Late one night, after everyone had gone home, I installed hidden cameras near the cash registers. It felt wrong, like I was betraying my staff, but I had no other choice. For days, I watched hours of boring footage, my eyes aching from staring at the screen. Then, on the 6th night, I saw it. Emma, moving quickly and sneakily, opened the register and stuffed wads of cash into her pockets. My heart sank. I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I called the police. The next day, as Emma finished her shift, 4 officers walked in. The look on her face, shock, then anger, told me everything I needed to know. She started thrashing around, knocking over tables and sending dishes crashing to the floor. "I deserve this money," she yelled. "I should be rich, not you. You stole my life." As the police led her away, I felt nothing, no sadness, no regret. Just a hollow emptiness where my love for my sister used to be. The next day, my parents stormed into the restaurant. Mom was crying, and Dad's face was bright red with anger. "How dare you?" Dad yelled. "Your own sister. Drop the charges now." I stood my ground. "No. She stole from me. She needs to face the consequences." I pulled out my phone and showed them the footage of Emma stealing. "Look," I said, "this is what your precious Emma did. She's a thief." They watched, their faces turning pale, but instead of understanding, their expressions hardened. "You set her up," Mom accused. "You've always been jealous of her." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Jealous? Are you kidding me? You gave me scraps and expected me to be grateful. Well, I'm done." Emma made her choices, and now she has to live with them. They tried everything, shouting, pleading, even threatening me, but I stayed firm. "Get out," I finally said. "Get out of my restaurant, and get out of my life. If you don't leave now, I'm calling the police." They left, but not before Dad spat out, "You'll regret this, Brenda. Mark my words." The trial was a nightmare. Emma's tearful performance on the stand almost made me doubt myself. But then a surprise witness came forward, her former boss. He testified about how Emma had behaved at her last job, aggressively pursuing him and even threatening to accuse him of sexual harassment if she didn't get her way. When her boss rejected her advances, she stole money from the company out of revenge. In the end, the jury found her guilty. As they led her away, she looked at me one last time. There was no regret in her eyes, only cold hatred. I haven't spoken to my family since that day. Sometimes, late at night, I wonder if I made the right choice. But then I look around at what I've built, at the life I've created for myself, and I know I did. As I stand in the kitchen of my newest restaurant, watching my staff prepare for the dinner rush, a sense of peace washes over me. This is my family now. This is my home, and no one, Emma, my parents, no one can take that away from me. To give some context, my mother-in-law is the kind of person who loves to make a big deal out of even the smallest accomplishments. She has a way of showing off her achievements, even though, to be honest, she doesn't live a particularly fancy or impressive life. But still, she puts a lot of effort into making herself seem important in our social circles. One clear example of her unusual behavior is the monthly club party she hosts. It's not a real club. It's just a gathering she organizes where she invites some friends and coworkers. Since they all share the same profession, she calls them her colleagues in a way that makes it sound like it's some exclusive group, but really, it's just her friends. These gatherings have been going on for quite a while, and from what I understand, they're mostly about each of them bragging about what they've achieved over the past month. So, given how much she loves to share her own stories, I wasn't surprised when she got all excited about sharing my upcoming wedding details. My grandfather had generously arranged a destination wedding for me, including a 7-day stay package. He knew how much I dreamed of a special wedding and decided to give me this wonderful gift. Since I had a limited budget, I was careful to plan every detail, including a very selective guest list. My husband and I sat down and discussed how we would handle the guest list. Coming from large families, we knew this would be challenging, but we agreed to keep it small and focus on close friends and family. I ended up inviting 24 of my family members, while my husband invited 19 of our closest friends and family. These were people we genuinely felt connected to and interacted with regularly. We were finally ready to send out the invitations when, unexpectedly, my mother-in-law arrived at our home late one evening, completely uninvited. It was already around 8 p.m., and her sudden appearance took me by surprise. Right from the moment she arrived, she began insisting we make changes to the guest list. I found it odd that she felt she had the right to dictate who should attend my wedding. To my disappointment, my husband was actually backing her up, which instantly concerned me. When I asked her what changes she wanted, she told me that she had already promised invitations to some of her work friends, the same ones she often invited to her club gatherings. She seemed very insistent, even though I calmly explained that we had already filled the guest list with people who were truly close to us. I tried to make it clear that each person invited was someone we had a meaningful relationship with, someone we saw and spoke to regularly. I looked to my husband for support, hoping he would understand the importance of keeping the guest list to those who mattered to us most. But he avoided making eye contact and, to my disappointment, continued to take his mother's side. I explained our reasoning again, hoping she'd understand, but she wouldn't budge. She kept pushing, asking me to rearrange things, and it left me feeling completely frustrated and, honestly, hurt that both of them couldn't see where I was coming from. I showed my mother-in-law the guest list, trying to explain that each person was someone very close to us. I told her that we couldn't take anyone off the list without hurting feelings, but she didn't agree. She even suggested removing my cousin's sister. This was someone I had lived with for several years after college, and she meant a lot to me. My mother-in-law's argument was that my cousin had recently moved to Dudley, so coming to our wedding in the States would be too inconvenient for her. At this point, I was losing my patience. I asked my fiancé to help me talk to his mother, hoping he would understand why I was so firm about keeping my cousin's sister on the list. Instead, he took his mother's side. He kept saying that we should honor her wishes and invite her friends, especially since she had already told them about the wedding destination. I could feel my frustration growing. It hurt that my fiancé didn't seem to care about my side of things, and I was angry that he seemed to be acting irrationally. Feeling overwhelmed and upset, I stormed out of the room to cool off. The next day, I woke up with a new plan. If they were going to be inconsiderate about my wedding just to look good in front of their friends, then I could respond in a similar way. I called my grandfather, who had been so generous in helping us with the wedding. I told him everything that happened the night before, explaining how both my fiancé and his mother were pushing me to change the guest list. When I finished explaining, I made a decision. I told my grandfather that, instead of trying to change their minds, I would just remove certain family members from my list. I told him I would take him, my grandmother, and my uncle's family off the list. I even suggested that he cancel the wedding gift he had planned since he was no longer invited. Thankfully, my grandfather understood my situation and didn't hold it against me. He supported my decision without any hard feelings. When I sent the new guest list to my mother-in-law and fiancé, they were shocked. I calmly explained that, by removing those family members, we had lost the wedding venue because my grandfather was no longer funding the wedding. I told them that now we either had to find a new venue within the next 3 months or consider postponing the wedding. There would also be new expenses for reprinting invitations and booking places for out-of-town guests. I wanted them to realize that the wedding was only happening because of my family's support. Soon after, my mother-in-law came over, apologizing for pushing me to change the guest list. She begged me to call my grandfather back and invite him and his family again. She even asked me to ask him not to cancel the hotel reservations or withdraw his support. In that moment, I hoped they both finally understood how their actions had complicated things. I couldn't help but wonder why my mother-in-law was suddenly apologizing. She had already gotten what she wanted. Invitations sent to her colleagues, fulfilling the promises she made to them. Now, she seemed troubled about it, admitting that if the wedding wasn't a destination event, inviting her friends wouldn't be as exciting or special for them. She even said a regular wedding would just be too ordinary. When she expressed these thoughts, my husband finally admitted that he regretted supporting her decision. But I wasn't ready to let him off the hook that easily. I reminded him that he shouldn't need things to go wrong to support me on something so straightforward. He apologized again, but I made it clear that my decision was final. Even if I invited my grandfather back, I knew we wouldn't get his generous gift back. I questioned myself, wondering if I was being too stubborn, but deep down, I knew I needed to stand my ground. It was my wedding, after all, and I had every right to make decisions that felt right to me. Yet, I couldn't ignore a tiny feeling of guilt. Was I being unreasonable for not reversing my decision? Did it make me a bad person to feel satisfied about sticking to my decision? Still, I reminded myself that my mother-in-law had pushed things to this point. Unfortunately, my mother-in-law wasn't done causing problems. As I mentioned before, I had no intention of asking my grandfather to restore his wedding gift, and this clearly upset her. She started calling my fiancé almost every other day, portraying me as ungrateful and difficult. She even hinted that I was trying to cause trouble on purpose. Although I had stood my ground, hearing her label me ungrateful stung, especially since she was the one responsible for creating this situation in the first place. But it didn't stop there. She went as far as advising my fiancé to reconsider his choices, saying that my actions were just the beginning and that his life would be like this if he stayed with me. During one of these calls, my fiancé had her on speakerphone, and I overheard every word. Surprisingly, I felt grateful to hear her true feelings out in the open. I realized that my fiancé usually kept things like this from me to avoid conflict, which was probably his way of trying to protect our relationship. He did tell his mother that she had crossed the line, but he didn't stand up to her in a stronger way. I understand that he has a close relationship with his mother, and it's not fair of me to ask him to cut ties with her just because she has issues with me. However, I also know that if this interference continues, I might reach a breaking point. The thought of dealing with this behavior for the rest of my life was daunting. Today, I had a heartfelt conversation with my grandfather and shared the news about the new wedding venue we had found. While it didn't match my original dream, just talking to him reminded me of what really mattered. He listened, understood, and reassured me, reminding me to keep my focus on the people who truly support us. I've always cherished my relationship with my grandfather, so reconnecting with him about the wedding meant a lot to me. Even though the venue we picked in the end wasn't exactly what I had first imagined, it was still beautiful, and I found true happiness in it. I told him he was invited again, and hearing his laughter warmed my heart. His constant support and love over the years have meant everything to me, and his encouragement made this difficult journey a little easier. As things with my mother-in-law grew more complicated, I felt I needed to talk openly with my husband about her behavior. Our conversation was honest and dug into the awkward and painful situations her actions had created. He promised to talk with her directly and make clear boundaries for her role in our lives. I hoped this would bring a bit of peace, so we could finally move forward without any more family drama. Then, finally, the wedding day arrived, and now I am officially married. Despite the ups and downs leading up to it, the wedding itself was beautiful, and I was overjoyed. One thing that made me smile was seeing my mother-in-law sitting in a corner with her work friends, looking a bit out of place. I realized that no amount of her planning or influencing could change that the day was still exactly what I wanted it to be. In a completely unexpected surprise, my grandfather gave us a house as a wedding gift. It was a generous present from him and my uncles together. I felt incredibly blessed, knowing they were excited for us to start our new life with such an amazing gift. I am so happy to be beginning this new chapter with my husband, and I wanted to share this update with everyone who followed our journey. Through all of this, I learned that some people will always try to tell others how their big moments, like a wedding, should happen or who should be included. It frustrates me that people feel entitled to decide things that are so personal. My mother-in-law may have had her own ideas, but I hope this experience shows her that it's time to let go of control and let us make our own choices. If she still wants to organize an event, she can plan her own. It's important for each person to be free to celebrate their life's milestones in their own way. Some people have suggested I rethink things with my husband, as he initially took his mother's side. It did hurt me, but I feel he is learning and starting to see things clearly now. I know I'm not perfect, and neither is he, but we're willing to work together, and that's what matters most to me. On a personal note, life has been busy. I'm currently pregnant and caring for our 3-year-old, so things are hectic. Recently, my parents and my sister decided to stay with us after their cruise got canceled. Our house is small, and while my parents took the guest bed, my sister chose the couch. She could have shared the bed with me, but her loud snoring kept us from getting any rest. By the second night, we were all feeling the effects of the lack of space. Then, during dinner, my dad shared some surprising news that added even more to our already full plate. Life's challenges never really end, but I'm ready to face whatever comes next. My dad casually told me that they had invited my sister's boyfriend, whom she'd only been dating for 6 weeks, to come stay with us for the entire weekend. He'd already bought his ticket and was arriving on Friday morning at 8 a.m. This caught me completely off guard. I'd never even met this guy, and he'd only been part of her life for a short time. What upset me most was that they didn't ask me beforehand if it was okay for him to stay. On top of that, we didn't have the space for another guest. He'd have to sleep on the couch, which was already tight, and my sister would either have to share the couch or my bed with him. The thought of a stranger staying overnight in my home, with my 3-year-old son sleeping in his own room, made me uncomfortable. Feeling frustrated, I called my husband, and together we decided to say no to the arrangement. We agreed that inviting someone I'd never met to stay in our home without even checking with us was disrespectful and just not okay. So, while I was at work, I called my sister to let her know about our decision. As soon as my mom found out, she got very angry. She started criticizing me, saying I was overreacting and doubting their ability to judge someone's character. She insisted they would never invite anyone who wasn't trustworthy, even though they'd only known him for a short time and hadn't spent much time with him. The conversation ended with them hanging up on me. Later, I found out they had quickly packed their things and left the house. My mom sent me a text afterward, accusing my husband of turning me against them. She said they were leaving not because they thought they were wrong, but because they believed I was being an inhospitable host. According to her, I had changed since I'd been with my husband, making me a less caring person over the past 8 years. 4 days later, they tried to call me again, acting as if nothing had happened. I was baffled by how they didn't seem to understand why I reacted the way I did. I'm left wondering if anyone else might understand their perspective because, to me, my actions felt completely reasonable. I was simply being a responsible parent, not unreasonable or rude. They invited themselves over, and I didn't feel obligated to host them, especially not a stranger. It feels like they couldn't handle the fact that I've grown up and am making my own choices without needing their approval. This experience made me realize I need to set clearer boundaries with them. In my response to them, I was honest. I explained that I'm not a bad host just because I didn't invite them in the first place. They chose to come, and I made room for them despite the inconvenience. But inviting someone else, a complete stranger, without my knowledge was crossing a line. I still feel surprised by their reaction, as if they don't understand or respect my feelings and choices in my own home. Setting these boundaries feels essential now, and it's time they understand that my decisions and the safety of my family come first. Their sense of entitlement was disappointing, and it's time for me to make it clear that things need to change if we're going to have a healthy relationship going forward. When I decided not to back down and refused their request to let my sister's boyfriend stay over, my family's reaction surprised me. They chose to leave and find somewhere else to stay, but not without attacking my character and questioning my decisions. After seeing how they behaved in my home, I realized things need to change. If they want to stay with us in the future, there will definitely be some new rules. For now, I've decided to take a step back from them and limit contact until I feel ready to reconnect. They crossed a line by inviting someone I'd never met into my home without even asking if it was okay. They didn't ask me, they just informed me that it was happening, assuming I would simply go along with it. They even mentioned noticing that I was in a good mood, which shows they knew this might not go over well. It felt like they assumed I'd just let it slide. But this time, I'm standing up for myself and putting the safety of my family first. I know I'm not wrong here. To give a bit more context, I'm a 35-year-old woman, currently 6 months pregnant with my first child. My husband, who is 38, is away on a business trip and isn't expected back until next month. Being pregnant and still working at the office has been challenging, so this situation with my family came at a stressful time. I felt their actions were inconsiderate, and it's frustrating because I'm trying to balance everything while keeping a peaceful environment for myself and my growing family. When I first met my husband, he had a very plain diet due to his mother's strict cooking style. She avoided using spices, sauces, herbs, and even basic things like salt, sugar, and pepper, as she thought it was healthier. He was used to bland food, but once he tried my cooking, he discovered a whole world of flavors beyond his mother's limited recipes. Since then, he's come to enjoy more flavorful food, and it's been nice introducing him to different tastes. One Friday, I had a strong craving for curry, so I decided to make a big batch. Usually, I have pre-prepared meals in the freezer, but this time I wanted to enjoy something fresh. I made extra and stored the leftovers in the fridge, looking forward to having it again the next day. However, that day my in-laws unexpectedly showed up. They have a spare key for emergencies, but this visit was unannounced. When I got home, ready to relax and enjoy my leftover curry, I found that it was gone. When I got home that day, I found my curry gone and replaced with a dish my mother-in-law had made. She had thrown away my meal, saying it tasted spoiled. I was really looking forward to my curry, and since I'm pregnant, I couldn't stomach the idea of eating her cooking. I didn't want to waste it, so I quietly took her food and gave it to a homeless person nearby. Unfortunately, someone saw me doing this and told my in-laws. Not long after, I started getting a flood of angry messages, including from my mother-in-law. My husband supported me through it, but now I'm wondering if I handled it the right way or if I overreacted. Honestly, it feels like my in-laws are trying to control more of my life than I'm comfortable with. Their behavior, coming into my home without asking and throwing away my food, shows a lack of respect for boundaries. The main issue here isn't just about the food. It's about the way they don't respect our space and privacy. Having them enter our home unannounced, especially when I'm not there, makes me feel uncomfortable. It's clear that some changes are needed to create a healthier balance. I want our home to feel like a safe, peaceful place, especially with a baby on the way. One idea I've considered is talking with my husband about setting firmer boundaries with his parents. We could start by politely explaining that we appreciate their support, but need a bit more privacy as we prepare for our new family. I'm also thinking about more practical steps, like changing the locks or even installing security cameras. This way, we can make sure that our space is respected and that our home feels like a safe place for our family. It's tough to navigate these situations with family, but I believe it's important to have clear boundaries. It's not about cutting ties or being unkind. It's about making sure everyone understands and respects our need for privacy and peace at home. I hope that, by being open about my needs, we can avoid similar situations in the future. After all, my home is my space, and I deserve to feel comfortable and respected within it. Setting these boundaries now will also help prevent misunderstandings once the baby arrives. It's important to create a supportive and respectful environment where everyone feels valued and respected. For now, I'm focusing on making my home a safe, happy place for my husband, our soon-to-arrive child, and myself. My name's Laura, and I never thought my life would get so crazy. I grew up in a normal family, nothing special. After college, I became a primary school teacher. It wasn't a fancy job, but I loved working with kids. Then everything changed when I met Larry. He was handsome, tall, dark hair, and had deep eyes you could get lost in. Plus, he was super rich. His parents owned a big company, and Larry was their favorite. We clicked right away. Larry said he liked how down-to-earth I was, and I thought that was sweet. Looking back, I should have noticed the warning signs. Our quick romance surprised everyone, especially his parents, who didn't like me from the start. I still remember the first time I met them. Larry's mom asked me in a rude tone, "What does your dad do?" I answered, "He's a plumber." The look on her face was like I had said something awful. Larry's dad wasn't much better. "Teaching, huh? Not exactly a moneymaker," he said. But Larry defended me. "I love Laura. You'll have to deal with it," he told them. We got married, even though his parents didn't approve. I moved into Larry's fancy apartment, feeling like Cinderella. Everything seemed perfect. I got pregnant quickly, and we had our son, Thomas. Larry's parents might have hated me, but they loved Thomas. Maybe they thought he'd turn out more like them. Life settled into a routine. Larry worked as a financial director at his dad's company, and I kept teaching and taking care of our home. It wasn't easy balancing work and taking care of Thomas, but I managed. One night, while putting Thomas to bed, Larry came home late again. "Another long day?" I asked. He just grunted, loosening his tie. "You wouldn't understand, Laura. It's complicated," he said. His words hurt, but I brushed it off. "Well, Thomas missed you. He wanted you to read him a bedtime story." Larry sighed. "I'm tired, Laura. Can't you do it?" As I watched him walk away, I had a bad feeling that something was changing between us. But I told myself we were happy this was the life, wasn't it? Over time, I couldn't ignore the growing distance between Larry and me. He was staying at work later, going out for dinners, and becoming more distant. I tried to tell myself it was just stress from work, but deep down, I knew something wasn't right. The turning point came when I found out about a company party. I was folding laundry when my mother-in-law called. "Laura," she said, her voice full of dislike, "I hope you're not planning to wear that awful green dress to the party tonight." I froze. "What party?" I asked. There was a pause. "The company's annual gala. Surely Larry told you." My heart dropped. "He must have forgotten," I said quietly. "Well," she replied, "maybe it's for the best. These events require sophistication, and we all know you struggle enough with the basics of being a financial director's wife." I hung up, my face burning with embarrassment. When Larry came home, I confronted him. "Why didn't you tell me about the party?" I asked. He sighed, loosening his tie. "Look, Laura, these events aren't really your thing. You're just too—" He paused, looking for the right word. "Simple," I finished bitterly. He shrugged. "You said it, not me." That night, Larry left for the party in his tuxedo, and I sat alone in our big apartment, feeling more out of place than ever. In the weeks that followed, Larry grew even more distant. I focused on taking care of Thomas and my teaching job, trying to ignore the growing feeling of dread. One day, while cleaning Larry's office, I noticed his laptop was open. Curiosity got the best of me, and I started looking through it. What I found shattered my world. There, in black and white, was an email chain between Larry and someone named Angela. As I read, my hands shook. She wasn't just a coworker. "God, you were amazing last night," one email read. "Laura doesn't even compare." Angela replied, "Of course not, darling. She's just a simple little teacher. How could she possibly satisfy someone like you?" They mocked me, calling me a fool. I also found out Larry had been buying Angela expensive gifts, things I never received. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at the screen with tears streaming down my face. Then I heard Larry's key in the door. I quickly closed the laptop and wiped my eyes. He walked in, smelling of expensive cologne. "Hey," he said, barely looking at me. I swallowed hard. "How was work?" I asked. "Fine," he muttered, heading for the shower. The next morning, I felt like everything had changed. I woke up early, my mind racing with everything I'd found out. Larry stumbled in around dawn, looking messy and smelling like alcohol. I pretended to be asleep as he collapsed onto the bed. When he finally woke up, I was ready. I had copied the emails onto a USB drive, which I held in my trembling hand. "Larry," I said, my voice surprisingly calm, "we need to talk." He groaned, rubbing his eyes. "What is it, Laura?" I've got a killer headache. I plugged the USB into the TV and pulled up the emails. Care to explain this? Larry's eyes widened as he recognized the messages. Then, to my shock, he smirked. Well, he said slowly. Looks like the simple little teacher did some snooping. How could you? I choked out, tears welling up. I'm your wife, the mother of your child. He stood up, towering over me. That's the problem, Laura. You're a wife and a mother. But Angela? She's exciting, sophisticated. She gives me things you never could. It felt like he'd slapped me. So, what now? Are you leaving me for hers? Larry laughed, a cold sound that made me flinch. Leave you? Why would I? No, Laura, I'm going to keep seeing Angela, and you're going to put up with it. Like hell I will, I spat, feeling a sudden rush of anger. He remained calm. Yes, you will, because without me, what do you have? A teacher's salary? A tiny apartment? Face it, Laura, you need me. I stared at him, realizing that this man was a stranger to me. In that moment, I made a decision that would change everything. No, Larry, I said quietly. I don't need you. Not anymore. I grabbed Thomas, who was thankfully still asleep, and headed for the door. Where do you think you're going? Larry called after me. To my parents, I shot back. Don't try to stop me. As I drove away, Thomas stirring in his car seat, I felt both scared and free at the same time. I didn't know what the future would hold, but I knew one thing for sure. I was done being Larry's simple little teacher. When I arrived at my parents' modest house, tears streamed down my face. My mom opened the door, took one look at me and Thomas, and ushered us inside without saying a word. Laura, sweetheart, what happened? She asked once we were settled in the living room. Through sobs, I told them everything, the emails, the confrontation, Larry's cruel words. My dad's face darkened as I spoke. I'll kill him, he growled, starting to stand up. No, Dad, I said, grabbing his arm. He's not worth it. I just need to figure out what to do next. My mom hugged me tightly. You'll stay here, of course. We'll help you with Thomas, and we'll get you a good lawyer. That night, I lay in my old bed, with Thomas sleeping peacefully beside me. I knew this was just the start of a long, hard road, but for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. I was free. The next few weeks were a blur of meetings with lawyers and sleepless nights. Larry, being Larry, wasn't going to let this go without a fight. He hired the best divorce lawyer in town and seemed determined to make my life miserable. One afternoon, my lawyer, Olivia, a kind woman with a gentle smile, told me, Larry is trying to get full custody of Thomas. He's saying you're an unfit mother. It felt like a punch to the stomach. What? How can he say that? Olivia sighed, adjusting her glasses. He's claiming you're unstable and that you've neglected Thomas. It's all lies, of course, but we need to be ready for a tough fight. And tough it was. Larry threw every accusation at me. He said I was mentally unstable, that I cheated on him, that I was a danger to Thomas. Every lie felt like a stab to my heart. The day of the custody hearing came, and I sat in the courtroom, my hands shaking as Larry's lawyer painted me as a bad mother. Your Honor, he said, pretending to be concerned, Mrs. Parker is clearly unfit to care for a child. She left the marital home without Mr. Parker's consent and took their son. She's unstable, prone to emotional outbursts. I wanted to scream that it was all lies, but Olivia had trained me well. I sat still, keeping my face calm. When it was our turn, Olivia stood up. Your Honor, my client is a devoted mother and a respected teacher. Mr. Parker's claims are baseless and cruel. We have character witnesses. The judge listened to both sides, his face giving nothing away. Finally, he spoke. After reviewing all the evidence, I find no reason to deny Mrs. Parker custody of Thomas. Mr. Parker will have visitation rights and will pay alimony and child support. I let out a sob of relief. Larry's face twisted in anger, but I didn't care. I had won. Thomas was staying with me. As we left the courthouse, Larry grabbed my arm and hissed, "This isn't over, Laura. I'll make you regret this." I pull my arm away. No, Larry, it is over. You lost. Deal with it. I walked away, my head held high, feeling stronger than I had in years. But I knew Larry wouldn't give up easily, and I had to be ready for whatever he might try next. Months passed, and life slowly found a new normal. I threw myself into my teaching job, treasuring every moment with Thomas and slowly rebuilding my confidence. But Larry wasn't finished with us yet. One Friday afternoon, while I was helping my mom prepare dinner, there was a knock at the door. When I opened it, I found Larry standing there, with a stunning blonde woman on his arm. "Laura," he said, in a voice that sounded too sweet, "I've come to see Thomas. This is Angela, my fiancée." It felt like I'd been hit in the stomach. "Fiancé?" I managed to say. Angela smirked as she looked around our modest home. "Yes, Larry and I are getting married. Now, where's the little one? I can't wait to meet him." I wanted to slam the door, but for Thomas's sake, I knew I had to stay calm. "Come in," I said through clenched teeth. As they entered, Angela wrinkled her nose. "What a quaint little place you have here," she said with a mocking tone. My parents, who had come to see what was going on, were clearly upset by her words. My dad started to speak. "Now listen here, young lady," but Larry interrupted. "No need to get upset. We're all adults here, aren't we?" "Well, some of us more than others," he added, looking at my parents with contempt. That was it. "Get out," I said, my voice low and firm. "Excuse me?" Larry asked, surprised. "You heard me," I replied, my anger growing. "Get out of my parents' house. You can see Thomas another time when you learn some respect." Angela laughed, a high, irritating sound. "Oh, honey, don't you understand? Larry doesn't need your permission. He has rights, you know." I stepped closer, my voice quiet but firm. "And I have the right to kick you out of this quaint house, as you called it. Now leave, before I call the police." Larry's face darkened. "You'll regret this, Laura. I'll take Thomas away from you. Just wait and see." That night, after putting Thomas to bed, I sat with my parents in the living room, my head in my hands. "What am I going to do?" I asked, my voice shaking. "He's going to try to take Thomas away. I just know it." My mom put her arm around me. "We won't let that happen, sweetheart. We'll fight him every step of the way." My dad nodded, his face determined. "I've got an idea," he said. "Remember Charles, your old school friend who became a private detective?" I nodded, unsure where he was going with this. "Well," he continued, "maybe it's time we did some digging of our own. Let's see what secrets Larry and his new fiancée are hiding." I hesitated. It felt wrong to sink to Larry's level. But then I thought of Thomas and the threat of losing him. I knew I had to do whatever it took to protect him. "Okay," I said, taking a deep breath, "let's do it. Let's hire Charles." The next day, I called Charles. We hadn't spoken in years, but when I explained the situation, he agreed to meet right away. We met at a small cafe, far from curious eyes. "Laura," Charles said, giving me a warm hug, "I'm so sorry you're going through this." I told him everything about the affair, the divorce, and Larry's threats. Charles listened carefully, his brow furrowed. "I'll take the case," he said. "We'll find out what Larry and his fiancée are really up to." Over the next few weeks, Charles worked nonstop. I tried to focus on teaching, caring for Thomas, and helping my parents, but I couldn't stop checking my phone for updates. Finally, one day, Charles called. "Laura, you need to come to my office right now." When I arrived, Charles looked serious. "I've found some things," he said, "and they're not good." He laid out a series of documents and photos. "First, your ex's fiancée, Angela, isn't who she says she is. Her real name is Angela Davis, and she used to work as an escort." I gasped. "Are you sure?" Charles nodded. "Positive. But that's not all. She's been involved in corporate espionage, leaking information from your in-laws' company to their competitors." My head was spinning. "Does Larry know?" "I don't think so," Charles replied. "But there's more. Larry himself has been embezzling from the company. He's been stealing money for years." I sat back, stunned. This was way bigger than I had imagined. "What do I do with this information?" I asked. Charles leaned forward. "That's up to you, Laura. But if I were you, I'd use it to protect yourself and Thomas." As I left Charles's office, My mind was racing. I had the power to ruin Larry and Angela, or Angela. But was that really what I wanted? The next day, I got an unexpected call. It was my mother-in-law. "Laura," she said, her voice cold, "we're having a small gathering for my birthday next weekend. We'd like you and Thomas to come." After hanging up, I felt a mix of anticipation and dread. The information Charles had uncovered was burning in my mind. I knew that at this party, I'd have to decide whether to use it or not. I looked at a photo of Thomas on my nightstand, his innocent smile beaming at me. "Don't worry, sweetheart," I whispered. "Mommy's going to keep you safe." With that thought, I started to plan. The party was just days away, and I had to be ready for anything. Larry and Angela wouldn't know what hit them. The day of my mother-in-law's birthday party finally arrived. I dressed Thomas in his best clothes and wore a simple but nice dress myself. As we drove to the fancy house I used to call home, my stomach churned with nerves. The welcome wasn't friendly. My mother-in-law gave me a cold look. "Laura," she said sharply, "we only invited you because you're Thomas's mother. Don't forget that." I swallowed my pride and nodded. "I understand. Thank you for including us." The party was in full swing, with high society chatter filling the house. I stood in a corner, feeling out of place, while Thomas played with his cousins. Suddenly, the room went quiet. Larry had entered with a beautiful woman on his arm. My heart sank as I realized it was Angela. "Everyone," Larry announced, smiling, "I'd like you to meet my fiancée, Angela. We're getting married next month." The room burst into cheers, and my in-laws rushed to hug Angela. "Oh, darling," my mother-in-law gushed, "we're so happy. You're just the kind of woman Larry needs, so well-educated and from a good family." She glanced at me, making it clear that, unlike Angela, I wasn't good enough for their son. Something snapped inside me. I stood up, holding the folder Charles had given me. "Actually," I said loudly, "I have something to say." The room went silent, and all eyes turned to me. "This woman," I said, my voice steady, "is not who she says she is. Her real name is Angela Mills, and she's using her cousin's identity. She has no real education and used to work as an escort." Gasps filled the room, and Angela's face went pale. I wasn't finished. "But that's not all. She's been leaking confidential information about your company to competitors." My father-in-law's face turned red. "Is this true?" he demanded. "And Larry," I added, turning to my ex-husband, "has been stealing money from the company for years." Chaos erupted. Larry lunged at me, but guests held him back. "You lying scum," he yelled. My father-in-law's voice boomed over the noise. "Enough." He turned to Angela. "Get out of my house. I'll see you in court." As Angela ran out, he looked at Larry. "You're fired. How dare you bring this woman into our family and steal from us? You're a disgrace." In the middle of all the chaos, my in-laws came over to me. My father-in-law spoke, his voice gruff. "Laura, we owe you an apology. You saved our company. We were wrong about you." I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and exhaustion. "Thank you, but I need to take my son home," I said, as I gathered Thomas and left the house. Behind us, the sounds of arguing continued, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace. The truth was out, and we could finally move on. In the weeks after that dramatic night at my in-laws' party, life sped up. The fallout was fast and serious. Angela, or rather Angela, was arrested for fraud and corporate spying. Seeing her led away in handcuffs was surreal. Larry didn't fare much better. His embezzlement was exposed, and he lost both his job and his fancy apartment. The last I heard, he moved to another state, his tail between his legs. He still calls Thomas sometimes, but the conversations are short and awkward. To my surprise, my relationship with my in-laws completely changed. They were truly sorry for how they had treated me. As a way to thank me for saving their company, they gave me a small apartment. "It's the least we can do, Laura," my father-in-law said as he handed me the keys. "We were wrong about you, and we're sorry." The apartment wasn't big or fancy, but it was ours. Thomas and I moved in, ready to start our new life. I threw myself back into teaching, finding joy in the simplicity of my work. Our life became calm and steady, free from the drama and stress we had been living with for so long. But that's not the end of the story. Remember Charles, my detective friend? After everything settled down, we started talking more often. He had been my support through the whole ordeal, helping me move and offering a shoulder to lean on. One day, as we were unpacking boxes in my new apartment, Charles picked up a framed photo and paused. "You know, Laura," he said softly, "you deserve so much better than what Larry put you through." I looked up and met his warm brown eyes. Something shifted between us in that moment. We began spending more time together, and our friendship slowly grew into something more. Charles was everything Larry wasn't: kind, caring, and he adored Thomas. Our first date wasn't anything fancy, just a picnic in the park with our kids. Charles has a son, William, who's a year younger than Thomas. The boys got along right away, chasing each other around the playground while Charles and I talked. I couldn't remember the last time I laughed that much. As we watched the kids play, I told Charles how happy I felt. He smiled and took my hand. "You deserve to laugh, Laura. You deserve to be happy." As weeks turned into months, Charles became a regular part of our lives. He was there for Thomas's first soccer game, cheering louder than anyone. He helped Thomas with his science project, patiently building a model of the solar system together. One night, after putting the boys to bed, we sat on my small balcony. Charles turned to me, his voice serious. "Laura, I want you to know that I'm here for the long run. You and Thomas aren't just a passing part of my life. I love both of you." Tears welled up in my eyes. "We love you too, Charles. You and William have made our lives feel complete again." As we sat there, holding hands and watching the stars, a sense of peace washed over me. For the first time in years, I felt truly happy. Life wasn't perfect, we still had challenges ahead, but with Charles by my side, and our boys becoming closer every day, I knew we could face anything that came our way. That night, as I drifted off to sleep, I couldn't help but smile. My story wasn't over, it was just the beginning of a beautiful new chapter.